Welcome to Iron Fist Archives.
In 1868, on a rain-soaked battlefield in northern Japan, a 21-year-old woman charged alone into an army of thousands. She carried no firearm. She carried a naginata, a bladed polearm, and she cut through enemy soldiers one by one, buying time for her people to survive. Her name was Nakano Takeko. And when she was shot through the chest and knew she was dying, she didn't scream. She didn't beg. She turned to her younger sister and gave her a single instruction: cut off my head. Don't let them take it as a trophy. Her sister obeyed. Takeko's head was buried at a temple in Fukushima, where it rests to this day. Now here is the part that should make your blood run cold. Nakano Takeko is not in most history books. Her army, the Jōshitai, an all-female battalion of samurai women, was written out of the official record. And she wasn't alone. For over 1,000 years, Japan had an entire class of female warriors. Trained, deadly, feared, they were called the Onna-Bugeisha, the woman warrior. They fought alongside samurai. They led armies. One of them invaded an entire country, and almost all of them were erased, not by war, not by defeat on the battlefield. They were erased by ink and politics, deliberately removed from the story of Japan when the world decided that women didn't belong in history as warriors. But here is what the bones say. In 1580, a battle was fought between two powerful Japanese clans at a place called Senbon Matsubaru. Centuries later, archaeologists dug up a burial mound from that battlefield and tested 105 bodies. 35 of them, 1/3 of all the remains, were female. 1/3. These weren't cooks. These weren't nurses sheltering behind the lines. These were women buried in the battlefield mound, exactly where the fighters fell. And nobody wrote their names down. That is the story you were never told. Stay with me, because what comes next is even more extraordinary. The story of the female samurai doesn't start in the feudal era. It doesn't start with swords and clan warfare. It starts in the year 200 AD. Japan had an empress named Jing. When her husband, Emperor Chai, died unexpectedly, she didn't retreat into mourning. She didn't hand power to the nearest male relative. She took command of Japan's military. And then she did something that even her male predecessors had never dared. She personally organized and led an invasion of the Korean peninsula, the Kingdom of Silla. Ancient accounts say she crossed the sea at the head of her fleet, and the Korean king surrendered without a single battle being fought. The sight of her army was enough. Whether every detail of this account is legend or fact, historians agree on this. Empress Jing is one of the earliest recorded female military commanders in all of Asian history. She set a template that would shape Japan for the next 1,600 years. The women who followed her were called Onna-Bugeisha, meaning literally, woman of martial skill. They trained with 3 primary weapons. The naginata, a long curved blade on a wooden shaft, somewhere between a sword and a spear. It rewarded technique over raw strength, making it ideal for female fighters facing larger opponents. The kaiken, a short dagger 8 to 10 inches long, worn inside the kimono at all times. Not for show, for use. And the art of tanjutsu, blade fighting at close range, specifically designed for confined spaces like castle corridors. These women were not learning self-defense. They were being trained to kill. And crucially, they weren't just fighters. In feudal Japan's legal structure, women of the warrior class were recognized as jito, land stewards, with the legal authority to govern territories in the absence of male heirs. They ran domains. They made treaties. They commanded men. This was not exceptional, this was normal. Until someone decided it shouldn't be. Of all the Onna-Bugeisha in Japan's history, one name rises above the rest. Tomoe Gozen. The 14th century text, The Tale of the Heike, Japan's equivalent of Homer's Iliad, describes her like this. She was a remarkably strong archer. As a swordswoman, she was a warrior worth 1,000, ready to confront a demon or a god, mounted or on foot. A warrior worth 1,000. That wasn't poetry. It was a military assessment. In 1184, during the Genpei War, a catastrophic civil conflict between Japan's two most powerful clans, Tomoe Gozen was given command of a samurai force. The odds she faced that day should have been suicidal. 300 samurai against 2,000 enemy warriors, she led the charge anyway. Of those 300 fighters, only 5 survived. Tomoe Gozen was one of them. Later that same year, at the Battle of Iwazu, she did something that has no parallel in Japanese military history. She rode into the enemy formation, seized the leader of the Musashi clan, a man known for his size and strength, dragged him from his horse, and decapitated him. She presented his head to her commanding general, Yoshinaka, as proof. General Yoshinaka, a man who had won dozens of battles, reportedly said that Tomoe Gozen was the finest general he had ever seen. The finest, not the finest woman, the finest general. And yet when historians began compiling the official record of the Genpei War, Tomoe Gozen received a few lines. The man she served under, who she arguably kept alive through her skill, received hundreds of pages. This is what erasure looks like. It's not always burning books. Sometimes it's just choosing what to write down. Tomoe Gozen was not alone. History gave us fragments of others, enough to understand what was lost. Hangaku Gozen. Called the female warrior of the East, she commanded a garrison of 3,000 soldiers defending Torisaka Castle against an imperial force of 10,000. She held that castle. She was eventually captured, not because she lost the fight, but because she was struck by an arrow. Even then, her captors were reportedly so awed by her courage that the imperial general offered to take her as his wife rather than execute her. Ohori Tsuruhime. Japan called her the Joan of Arc of the East. She was the daughter of a chief Shinto priest on a small island in the Seto Inland Sea. When enemy forces from the Uchi clan launched a naval campaign to conquer her island, she put on armor, took command of the fleet, and personally led 4 separate naval battles to repel the invasion. 4 battles, 4 victories. She won every single one. She earned a title that no man in the Sengoku period, Japan's era of endless civil war, ever received. They called her the strongest woman in the Warring States period. Not the strongest for a woman. The strongest woman in an era defined by constant brutal warfare. Tachibana Ginchiyo. She inherited command of the Tachibana clan, one of Kyushu's most powerful military forces, after her father died with no male heir. She didn't just maintain the clan, she expanded it. She trained her women in combat herself and personally led them in the field. And perhaps most striking of all, Hōjō Masako. After her husband, the first Kamakura shogun, died, she didn't hand power to her son. She effectively became the political force behind Japan's most powerful military government for decades. The samurai called her the nun shogun, not as an insult, as a title of respect. These women ran domains, led armies, and changed the outcome of wars. And most people watching this video have never heard a single one of their names. That is not an accident. In 1868, the same year Nakano Takeko died charging enemy lines, Japan was changing. The Meiji Restoration swept away the old feudal order. The samurai class was officially abolished. Japan opened its doors to the West, determined to industrialize, modernize, and critically, to be taken seriously by European powers. And there was a problem. Victorian Europe had a very specific idea of what women were supposed to be. Docile, domestic, decorative. Japan's new leadership looked at their own culture and made a calculated decision. The story of warrior women didn't fit the image Japan wanted to project, and so the history of the Onna-Bugeisha was quietly repositioned. The naginata, once a weapon of war, was reframed as a ceremonial item. When samurai women married, they brought their naginata into their new home, not as weapons, but as symbols of graceful femininity. The same blade that had beheaded warlords was turned into a wedding decoration. Then came the Western historians. Early Western scholars who wrote about Japan carried their own cultural biases into their research. They found samurai, and they wrote about them as male warriors. They found women, and they wrote about them as obedient wives in silk kimonos. The warrior women simply didn't compute within their worldview, and so they didn't write about them. This process, the Meiji government's political need combined with Western academic blindness, was so effective that by the 20th century, even many Japanese people had lost connection with this part of their own heritage. The erasure was complete, or almost complete, because the ground remembers what the books forgot. Here is where history gets complicated for those who rewrote it. You can burn documents, you can rewrite textbooks, you can redirect a culture's memory, but you cannot change what is buried in the earth. Archaeological excavations across Japan have now uncovered a consistent pattern that no historian can easily dismiss. 3 separate battlefield burial mounds have been excavated and tested. All 3 show the same thing: women buried in the fighting positions, not behind the lines. The most widely discussed case is the Battle of Senbon Matsubaru from 1580, a clash between the Takeda and Etche clans. When archaeologists examined 105 sets of remains, roughly 1/3 were identified as female. Note that this was not a siege. The women weren't trapped civilians in a castle. These remains were found in the battlefield mounds where the fighters fell. Historians have to reckon with a simple conclusion: women fought in Japanese armies as a regular occurrence, and almost none of them were ever recorded by name. For every Tomoe Gozen whose story survived, there were hundreds whose bones lie anonymous in the earth. Every October, at Kai Temple in Aizubange, Japan, a ceremony is held. People gather at a small grave marker. They lay flowers. The grave contains the head of Nakano Takeko, buried separately from her body because her sister followed her dying wish and refused to let the enemy claim her. She was 21 years old when she died. She had been training since she was a child. She had mastered the naginata, the literary arts, calligraphy, and then, when her country called, she walked to the front line that her own commanders told her not to cross. She crossed it anyway. The Onna-Bugeisha were never a myth. They were never a footnote. They were a fundamental part of what Japan was, a society that for over 1,000 years trained its women to defend, to lead, and to die with honor. They were erased because the people who came after them needed them to be invisible. But the earth kept their secret, and now you know it too. If this history deserved to be remembered, share it. Because the greatest weapon used against these women wasn't a sword, it was silence. And you just broke it.